What do CEOs need to know about sales these days? A lot. Outdated sales strategies and tactics plague most companies today. Listen to what innovative CEOs and experts have to say about how to change all that with Sales Talk for CEOs. So much data. We are just bombarded with data. And it's a good thing, but if you're not making any use of that data, it just is taking up a lot of space, honestly. One of the things we need to know today is what is the journey our customers are taking to, once they find us, to actually get to have a conversation with someone who can help them. And is that actually happening, right? So we want it to happen. We've got this flow, but how are you tracking when that customer lands on your website, they take an action, and what happens next? How do you know they've actually gotten to a seller? Well, LeanData can fix that problem for you. And I'm so lucky to have Evan on today, who is the CEO of LeanData. Welcome, Evan.
Thanks for having me.
So just in your words, tell us a little bit about LeanData and exactly what you do and who you serve.
Absolutely. So LeanData has been around for about 10 years, and we're the leading pioneers in what was a space called matching and routing. So we now call it revenue orchestration. The simplest example is when someone visits your website, like Alice says, we're the system that figures out if it's an existing customer that you should have an account manager or CSM follow up. If it's an open opportunity, you want to have an AE. And if it's an SDR, you probably want to round robin and have someone follow up really, really quickly. So that action of who does the next step, LeanData does that for over 1,000+ enterprise customers.
Wow. Yeah, so important. Especially today, Evan, as a CEO, what do our salespeople always say? I need more leads, right? The sales leaders, marketing, we need more leads, right? Well, we have some leads. Can we please make sure that they're going to the right place and actually getting followed up on?
Correct. What drives the CEO nuts is a great lead comes to your website and it gets lost and no one follows up. I know as a CEO that drives people bonkers, right?
Absolutely. It's like, well, we had some leads. What did you do with them?
Yep.
And it's that age-old battle. But I love that you figured out a way to track that. Now, are you a marketer? How did you get this idea? 10 years ago, you and your co-founder just sitting around having a beer, right? You decided to start a company. Is that what happened?
No, I think it was mostly I just had the pain point myself. So at my last company, I was a general manager. I had an inside sales team reporting into me, and we were bringing in marketing automation. So this is the early days. Think about 12 years ago. As we were bringing those systems together, basically we ran into a whole lot of data and process challenges. Like you said, there's so much data, but if you don't have the right data, and so I ran into the problems. My sales and marketing teams weren't getting the efficiency from the tools, and that's when I realized, boom, hey, if you don't run your data and processes efficiently, the leads are going to get lost and people aren't going to be able to follow up. And so I solved it at my last company. We pioneered things around things like fuzzy matching. And that's when I was like, hey, I bet you a lot of people are going to struggle with the same things. When Salesforce goes from a data silo to an integrated system, you have to have great data and processes. And so that's why we started a company to solve that for folks.
Like many founders, yes, you solved your problem. And then you're like, I bet some other people could use this solution also. And okay, so heading into that, were you in sales? You said you were a general manager, so you weren't actually doing the sales role.
No, so I was a general manager of the product. So I had an inside sales team. That being said, a long time in my career, I was quote unquote, like my first job out of school was a little bit like an SDR. I was cold calling with quotas. So I've always have a warm spot in my heart for our SDR team, and that's continued to this day. So.
Awesome. All right. So you guys, you left your company, you got your structure together. Sounds like you sort of built it at your previous company, right? Brought it forward, got started. Who did the selling in the beginning?
Yeah, so my co-founder is our CTO. So I was definitely the one who I had a target list of 50 accounts that I had potential relationships with. Yeah. And so I just hit the street and I sold our first 20.
You sold the first 20. All right. How did you do that?
Yeah, so it was a lot of this was pre-pandemic, obviously, and so it was just getting warm intros going there and just trying to pitch the problem set. So it wasn't really about the solution; it was more about, do you have problems with data in your CRM? And a lot of people were like, yes. And I was like, hey, we can help you solve that. So it was a little bit of a pitch, almost so much of the product, but also just like, hey, we can help you. And our goal was just to get clients so we could get access to their data and then figure out their challenges. And so it's amazing that if you are able to pitch yourself that way, we got some pretty big clients like Marketo and Palo Alto Networks, and they were willing to open up their CRMs and work with us. And
amazing. And I like what you said. Sometimes I don't like the word pitch because it's like I'm throwing something at you fast, right? Right. But you said we pitched the solution set, right? So you pitched, or sorry, the problem. You said you pitched the problem they were having. You weren't pitching your product or the solution. You pitched their problem to them and they were like, yes, we have that problem. And then you were able to say, oh, well, I think we can help.
Yep.
So I think that we get off on the wrong foot a lot of times as sellers, whether it's the founder doing the selling or the sellers, we're out there trying to sell them our solution before we understand their problem. We need to get them to say, yes, I have that problem. Then they're listening, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So that's cool. So 20 customers in, fantastic, because that means you had some people who would speak on your behalf, referenceable customers. That's what we all want, right? Yeah. So now you're running the company and you're doing the sales. At what point do you think, wow, I better get some salespeople in here. I need to build a sales team. And then like, what were you thinking? Like, what were your challenges around that? Had you ever built a sales team before?
Yeah, no, not at the very initial stages. So I was a first time founder. Previously background, I had a venture capital background, so I was able to get funding. So the idea was to scale pretty fast off the bat. So that certainly helps if there are bootstrap founders. That's a little bit different. So yeah, so after I got our first couple of customers, we brought in basically the mantra was like we brought in 2 or 3 sales reps. And I was like, hey, replicate what I did, right? Follow me and do that. And we ran into challenges right away, actually, because I didn't realize as a founder-led sales, a lot of the things was people were also, because some of these were relationships or people that knew of me, they were kind of investing in me. So for me to sell this, it was kind of consulting services that wasn't replicable for a sales rep, right? Especially when we're talking about people's data and processes. So yeah, it actually was pretty hard. And we had to at least productize or be more clear around what we were doing. And that did almost involve kind of a little bit of a product pivot. So we actually had to take what we had learned from our initial customers, actually pioneer kind of a new space. And then that was something the sales reps could sell. But what I had been doing, that wasn't replicable for other folks because they didn't come out as authorities or experts in cleaning up your sales force. Right? So that was an interesting first challenge.
And that's great. You know, it led you to where you are today, right? Because you figured out, oh yeah, if we can't duplicate this, we got to slim it down or change it around a little bit so that it can be duplicated and other people can do it. Did you are the people who you hired in the very beginning still there, or did you realize, okay, we need a different type of seller?
So yes and no. So the 10 years ago, those people are no longer here, but some of those people ended up being quite successful for a number of years. And I had also brought in like a VP of sales. And he's like, I joined too early because these guys didn't have quite that fit. The flip side is he was part of there was this interesting conversation where we decided almost to part ways. And I said, except if you can figure out something we can sell more scalably. And he did figure something out, taking something from our clients. He ended up lasting for probably like 6-7 years and helped us scale from basically 0 to 10 million. So that was quite successful. And kudos to him in figuring that out, that bit of a product pivot. So
it's expensive to hire a VP of sales. And sometimes companies do hire them too early, or they hire them without clearly understanding what their role is, right? And what we want to do is try to take some work off the CEO's plate. So of course, that's why we're hiring them. But lucky you got somebody smart enough to go, oh my gosh, it's a little early here. So we're going to have to pivot and do some things. Yep. That was really lucky because I've had some other founders telling me stories of, yeah, we went through 3 VPs of sales before we figured it out. Not unusual, but good to know. And I think that, you know, when you are earlier stage or more, even if you're older and you're more entrepreneurial, when you bring people into these types of positions, especially the VP level for sales, marketing, customer success, these have to be people who are agile. They're used to pivoting. You don't want somebody out of a big company who's been doing it the same way for a really long time, and they have a big team around them and they don't know how to do the work themselves, right? Or dig in. It's important to look for those people who are agile and more entrepreneurial and know how to support an entrepreneurial organization and help grow it.
I completely agree with that, and we got lucky because I did make a classic mistake, but we got lucky that we had brought someone who had, I would say, also an open mind, a curious mind, and willingness to experiment, and not just take, hey, it worked over here, so I'm going to play the exact same playbook, especially those earlier stages, because, like I said, we had to make a number of changes to get there.
So, for only being 10 years in, you have built a rather robust sales organization. And I'm pretty fascinated with it because it's one of the better ones that I've heard about. And I think that the CEOs and all of those who support CEOs out there that are listening
Yeah.
can really take note of some of the things you're doing and maybe make some structure changes themselves. I'm going to just tee this up by saying this. Many of you out there have salespeople doing a lot of things that prevent them from having conversations with people who can buy from them every day, right? So what do we want salespeople to do? Have conversations with people who can buy for them, because our sellers should know how to uncover the problem and guide, the buyers through to a good solution. But when they're stuck doing so many administrative things that we think are sales, right? It's taking so much time for them to do that they're not even having, some of people I've talked to, their salespeople aren't even having 5 actual conversations a week with someone who can buy from them. So explain your structure that you grew into. So the early days, yes, you did the selling, you got this VP, you had a couple salespeople. Tell us what you grew into and what it looks like now.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're about a 200-person company, and I would say the selling org I'd call about 70 folks. And so in that org, I mean, probably the frontline reps are probably like 25. We have a 1-to-1 SDR to AE ratio because of the nature of our product. We are outbounding quite a bit. On top of that, we have invested a lot into the infrastructure around like sales enablement. We have ops, a centralized ops team that I'm not counting into that central thing. We have a full stack of sales and marketing solutions to automate things on the front end and back end. You have a separate marketing team, you have a separate solutions team. And so we are trying to build that kind of scalable processes where the salespeople can focus on what they do best and they are supported. And the reason for that is because we sell to some of the most leading edge, cutting edge companies around sales and MarTech. We ourselves have to build those scalable processes. And so we invest a lot in data and processes to make sure that our reps are supported around that. Doesn't mean it's just you just push a button. It's not easy. I wouldn't say that. But at the same time, we know that it's not because they are spending time on manual efforts or other things, or because they have dirty data or the leads are going to the wrong places. Those are no longer hindrances for our sales reps to be successful.
You mean you actually walk your talk? You actually like drink your own. People like to say eat your own dog food. I prefer to say drink your own champagne. Yep. So you guys actually drink your own champagne. So let's break it down a little bit for everybody who's listening, because sure. I do think that there's some key pieces in here. Because that sounds expensive to me, Evan. That sounds expensive, right? And that's what other CEOs and sales leaders think. Oh my gosh, these sellers don't sell enough to have all these support people working for them. Mm-hmm. Well, on the other hand, maybe they could sell more, right? If you had the support, and maybe you don't start with all the support. Maybe you don't have a 1-to-1 ratio, but maybe you start, right? But let's talk about that. How did you get to the point where you had a 1-to-1 ratio SDR to AE?
Yeah. So actually, because one of our biggest challenges is we were pioneering category. Our category did not exist before us. And so we weren't going to be like, let's say someone like Zoom, like we couldn't just be like, hey, we're just like that, but better and cheaper. So we had to kind of institute and fulfill the demand. And so our biggest challenge was educating the marketplace. And in that motion, like I said, you may have to forward invest a little bit. So the 1-to-1 SDR ratio to AE ratio started off pretty early. So that because we knew we had to outbound into these accounts, and we had to separate and have the AEs focus on what they did. There were other infrastructure, some of the technology, the ops, and all that grew organically as we scale. I'd say like a key point is kind of like when you're over like 10 sales reps, right? You kind of get to that next level. The next level, I typically see my clients around where like 30 sales reps, and then like 100 sales reps. The level of technology and sophistication you have at each of those stages, you mature up into it, but hopefully your organization has the scalability to support that. But what worked before that isn't going to work later. Now, one benefit of why we can justify some of these SDRs is oftentimes our best AEs come from the SDR program. So we don't think of them just as setting meetings. And I said I was passionate and have empathy. Oftentimes those guys, it's a training ground to get AEs, and those are our most successful AEs. Then if you amortize that cost, it's not as high, right? Because it becomes a recruiting channel. And in certain markets, like a couple of years ago, right, getting high price AEs is very difficult, especially ones that understand your product and understand your culture. And so by having those SDRs be feeders, and we've had SDRs become CSMs, AAM, solutions consultant. So you think of it as almost a recruiting tool, then that justification is easier than to just simply meeting setters.
Yeah. And I think that's so important because when we hire SDRs, we know, I mean, all the statistics tell us they won't stay long, right? So we need a path for them. And if we say, look, do this job and learn how to do it well, you learn the product, you learn our customers, you learn our company. Now you can go into marketing, you can go into customer success, you can go into sales. You might even go into some other, department of our company. We don't know, right? But you're here to learn and help us grow in this role, which will help you grow. So I love that attitude. And I agree, when you make that your recruiting pool, it really lowers your costs. So let's talk a little bit about how you do enablement. So when did you decide, gosh, we really needed somebody to enable, and what does your enablement function actually do?
Yeah, so I think this was probably 5 years ago that we actually had enablement. So probably you could argue, like I said, it was over 10 sales reps, and we were adding like multiple products and those type of things. And that's when we felt like, hey, we needed someone who could bring someone in. So it was someone who had previously worked with our CRO in the past. At some point in time, we brought in a CRO, and her function is really around being that coach. She's a former sales rep, so she's been successful selling in a related space, and she pretty much brings that sales methodology. So we use MedPick, right, and rolling that out and helping sales reps be successful around that, running our sales kickoffs meetings. But then we've also expanded that role to be much more of not just sales enablement, but also enablement across all the different functions around CSM and account management. So we think about it holistically. So we're looking at that customer journey across from both sales and renewals, and that's really key for us because one of the things we tracked a lot is customer virality. So customers that used us multiple times and take us with that. That only happens if you do a good job selling, good job implementing, good job actually making them successful, and then they'll come back to you. So you have to think longer term.
Right, because it's no longer enough to count how many customers you have. We need to count how many successful customers we have, because as you called it, customer virality, right? Well, they come back for something else. They leave and go to another company and say, oh, we got to bring LeanData in, let's go, let's get them, right? And that's what we're all looking for, because it makes sales so much easier when we have that inbound referral source coming into us, right? So that's really beautiful. So with your enablement, I like what you just mentioned is that you went from just enabling sellers, right, your SDRs and your AEs, to, wow, we need to enable our CSMs and everybody else who touches the customer, because what we're actually trying to do is help the customer on their journey. So really, in essence, you're enabling the customer by enabling everyone else at your company, right?
Yep, definitely.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Have you guys reworked it all around customer journey? Like, have you took a pause and gone, let's stop. 10 years ago when we started, the customers were doing this, but now it seems like they're doing this. Have you done that work?
Absolutely, and I think it's been kind of a number of different iterations. So originally, when we first set up our customer org, they did everything. So they would implement, they would renew, they would upsell, they would do technical support. It was one role, and it was overwhelming. And so we kind of split those up similarly to the sales org. So we have PS that implement. We have what we call TSS, but they're support, right? So they answer the questions, and then we have our CSMs. And then lately we've split those into account managers who sit on the sales team. And the CSMs, we've redefined kind of their role. And I think that's ever evolving. That whole space is maybe like 10 years old. If you think about a company like Gainsight, who's really pioneered it. And recently we've been trying to look, we always are very customer first. That's one of our cultural values. And we're always looking for our customers, where can we add the most value to them? And so we are currently trying to reshape what we think of as the CSM role, not away from just like, hey, send them a cadence and just follow up with them and make sure they renew. We want them to almost become like more like coaches. Like, hey, how do you enable my clients after the implementation to fish for themselves and get the full value of LeanData? And I got this from customers. They were like, hey, we loved our implementation people, but I get it. They got to move on to the next project, but we still like best practices on the way, right? And so we've had to make our CSMs more technical, and we've had to also change what we measure and how we think about them. It's not about the dollars. It's about being that coach. And it's different to be a coach than to implement. Implement's like get us going as quickly as possible. A coach is, hey, I can show you a little bit, but I want you to realize that full potential. We see that in our customer base. The ones who get our product and the power, they're with us for life and they're viral, right? Other ones who set it and forget it, those are the ones I worry about. They don't complain either. Like, you don't hear from them.
No, they don't complain. Just one day they disappear.
Correct.
So I mean, CSM, it is customer success management, success. Yep. So what do we need to do to make our customers successful? Well, of course we need to onboard them, like you said, and that's great. But it's that user adoption once they're onboarded, and then that continuous engagement. And what we really want to build is super users, right? So our customer success team should be responsible for making super users at every one of our clients. Not every person at every one of our clients will be a super user, right? But there needs to be some, because that makes it stickier and stickier. And so by you continuing to evolve these positions based on the feedback from your customers is awesome, right? So they're telling you, yes, and we also want this, right? Because those customers that are just quietly using your product, that scares us. Just, we don't know what's going on over there. So these customer success people can evolve as well. Yes, you got to onboard and do that piece. Yes, you've got to stay with them and be technical and create those super users. And that's interesting. So that leads me to think, do you do a customer event where you do bring your customers together and you have a super user group or something like that? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so we did that a number of years ago. So for us, a lot of people go to Dreamforce, right? Salesforce's big event. So we started a big satellite event called OpStars. So the OpStar, and it's.
I didn't realize. Okay, so ding, ding, ding. Sorry, I go to Dreamforce also, and I've been to your OpStars events. But that's not just you. There's a couple other companies involved with that, right?
There is. So it is an industry thing, but LeanData is the main host.
Okay.
And so we started that off in a small restaurant, and
I remember. I was at some of those first years. Yeah.
There we go. And so that's an opportunity for us to educate, bring our customers together. We've built that into a whole customer marketing program. So the other thing that we have LeanData certifications. So you can become a certified user for us. People put that on their LinkedIn badges. We've also seen that LeanData certified users renew at an 8% higher rate than non-certified users. And so there's a big push to get as many people certified as possible.
Okay, say that again, because I want everybody listening to hear what he just said. Go.
Yeah, so LeanData certified users renew at an 8% higher rate than non-certified. So
80%.
8%, absolute, okay. But 8% absolute, right? So you go from 80, you're going to 88, right? And that's a big difference.
Right. And so how many of your users are certified currently?
Yeah, so we're about like 40%, but we'd like to get that to 50, 60%. Yeah. That's one of our big goals.
So that is another role for customer success.
Yes, exactly.
Right? Piquing the interest. And of course, customer marketing and customer success together can pique the interest of those who'd like to be certified and get them certified.
Yep.
Yeah, I love that. All right, so here we are. We have our sellers who are supported by their SDRs who are feeding them conversations, which is
Yep.
awesome. We have marketing feeding all of that because they're at the front end, right?
Mhm.
Getting the interest, and so that when the SDRs call, people know who they are now, and following up on any downloads and things like that, so the SDRs can follow up. We've got all that going. Then you've got customer marketing on the other end. They're already a customer. How do we keep talking to them? So that's supporting your sales. You have enablement supporting your sales. You've got ops supporting your sales. You've got this great customer support team. And now you even broken into account managers. So they're back with the AEs.
Yep.
I love this. This is a big, expensive sales organization.
It is. And so it's built for scale. And then I think the last part is we have solution consultants, right? So
Oh,
they
right.
so that's like, hey, you bring the technical experts to
Yes.
provide that demo.
So the salesperson does not have to know every nitty gritty piece, which nor, I mean, it's too much.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that the main thing is, hey, you do this with the option to scale your organizations and make people successful. And these days, as you think about efficiency, the key thing is then to align your how much you're doing with your capacity, right? That's the fine. You kind of built these unit economics, and you try to figure out how to scale that. And in today's markets, when it's tougher, you got to make sure that you don't, it's not growth at all costs, right? That's
Right.
why
No.
you have to be very clear around, hey, what is the reasonable target given our market conditions, given our things, right? That we have to drew, and drawing that fine line is the challenge of all. I think CEOs these days is you want it to be aggressive, but not too aggressive. Right? How do you set that, and how do you not leave money on the table, but also don't get yourself into the quandary where you've overhired and you have to do something like layoffs, which is a mantra that I've learned to avoid. And so we've been fortunate not to do that by being very.
Right. Well, in this economy right now, too, and especially software, and do you consider yourself software as a service?
Yeah,
Okay.
we're a SaaS
And
company.
everything we're reading, what are we reading about software as a service, right? It's not good, but you've built an organization that supports your continued growth without being, having a lot of fluff. It sounds like there's a lot there, but every one of those humans has a job to do that supports your customer and supports your sellers so they can do what they need to do. And you keep growing, like you said, at the right pace without having to do layoffs,
Yep.
which is a beautiful thing. And what you're selling is a very, very needed thing right now
Yeah.
for the same reason, right? Everybody's trying to grow their sales, but everybody's got all this data and they're not doing anything with it. And everybody's wondering what happened to all those leads, right? Especially after a trade show or a big push on,
Totally.
some SEO push, or, some down, hey, big download this, and then what happened, right? So it's an interesting space to be in. So let's talk about what's next. I mean, you're growing, you're doing great. You've got this beautiful organization. I know everybody's got problems. I'm sure we didn't even rip into that, right? What the challenges are, but what do you see coming next for your organization? Where is this going to grow and change even more? What's the future?
Yeah, so absolutely. So I mean, I think we were we're the leaders and dominant in our initial space, right? But there are adjacencies, right? So I think one of the and how do you become truly multiple products, right? And that's a different motion that you need to support. And so for us, we've recently launched a product called Book It, that's in and around the calendaring space. So think like a Calendly and Chili Piper, and we just think that makes a ton of sense with us because we were the leaders in getting you the right leads. Now we can get you the meetings, right? Getting a meeting booked on your calendar, and that's even more critical to get the right person involved. And so for us, it's how do we expand the product suite? And again, the mantra is being customer first and deliver that delightful customer experience, because ultimately that's what we care about. We care about making our customer sales and marketing teams more efficient. And how do we have a kind of a platform and product suite? I mean, the other areas, integrations. So people have invested so much in their stacks, sales engagements, enrichment, all these tools. LeanData sits in between. So we call it revenue orchestration because it's no longer about just getting the right lead here. We do across any object and help it across the stack. So an example would be ABM. We can take a 6 cent signal. If no one owns that account, assign it to the right account owner, right?
Right.
Make sure that they know it. And then we can set off sales cadences from your sales loft or outreach system. We can orchestrate all of that. And so for LeanData, we've kind of taken our initial landing spot and have expanded it all with the goal of trying to add more and more value for our customers.
Yeah, that is excellent. So if people do want to learn more about LeanData, how do they do that?
The best thing, come to our website, www.leandata.com, and we learn more, and we'd be happy to guide you through and give you best practices. And that's one of our strengths, really, is like I said, we've had the fortune to work with some of the best customers out there, and so we bring that expertise into kind of all our new customers. So
Yeah. And if a CEO wants to understand more about how you built this amazing sales organization,
yeah.
can they reach out to you on LinkedIn or?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just Evan Liang. So feel free to drop me on LinkedIn, and please mention that you saw the podcast. We do get a lot of spam LinkedIn. So
Yeah, I always tell people, hey, I heard you on Alice's podcast, so they'll accept your connection request.
exactly.
And most CEOs are happy to connect with other CEOs, but you got to know what's spam and what's not. So that's really good as well. All right, so last words of advice for these CEOs who are out there looking at their sales organizations, working with their CROs or VPs or their sales leaders in their organization, and saying, how do we grow from here? And some of them are a little afraid to add these extra, add more SDRs or add the customer success or account manager, whatever it is, to segment further to really support the customer. What are some words of advice you have for them in moving that direction?
Yeah. So across 1,000+ customers, I say everyone's go to market's a little bit like a snowflake. We have all the same basic pieces, but everyone's unique. And so I just encourage everyone to think through. It's like, just because it works somewhere else, it may not work here. But just because you've been doing something for a long time doesn't mean you can't do it better. And so just have an open mind and be willing to experiment and try different things and join podcasts and learn things. I'm a little bit always skeptical about something that works their way, but I'm always open to listening and trying to think what are bits and pieces that apply to me and what may not apply. And so in that way, you can kind of continue to fine tune it that the right fit for you, and you can build your own snowflake. So.
Thank you so much, Evan, for taking the time to be with me and all of our listeners today. I so appreciate it. And I really wish you all the best with your continued growth. You are just really on a great path, and it's really fun for me to see that and to have that as an example out there.
Fantastic. Pleasure to be here, Alice, and we'll hopefully see you and more of your subscribers at OpStars this year.
You bet. Hey, so keep me posted on that, because we will promote that, and we can put it in the podcast link, but we can also put it on the internet. So you just keep me posted, and we'll help promote that for you.
Fantastic. Great.
All right. Have a good day.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed the show, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.